Hi, welcome to Healthcare Redefined, advocating for aging adults and their family. This is our episode number 4, Avoiding Hospitalization Readmissions. Hi, I'm Pam Dunwald.
Hi, and I'm Linda Kritikos. We're both registered nurses, board certified patient advocates, and owners and operators of Your Nurse Advocate Consulting. And we're really glad you're joining us. Welcome back to people who have been with us for the first 3 episodes, and also welcome to any new listeners.
Today we're talking about a topic that affects so many families, and that's hospital readmissions. And what exactly is a hospital readmission? That is when you're discharged from the hospital and you're readmitted to the hospital within 30 days that you have been discharged. So if you've ever had a loved one come home from the hospital only to end up back there within weeks, you know how stressful and discouraging this can be.
It can be extremely frustrating and discouraging. And sometimes it doesn't even take 30 days, does it? Sometimes, it can be 72 hours, or the next day. So hospital readmissions aren't just frustrating, they can be very, very risky, costly, and often very preventable. That's why advocacy, such as what Pam and I do, plays an important and really crucial role during and after a hospital stay.
So let's break down some of the most common reasons older adults end up back in the hospital. Number 1, confusing or incomplete discharge instructions. Sometimes the patient, the aging adult, is the only one receiving those discharge instructions. There's not a family member present or another person, and sometimes they just don't understand all of it. Number 2, medication errors or misprescriptions. We're going to talk a little bit about that when I share a story in a few minutes. Lack of follow-up appointments. Sometimes you're discharged on a Sunday. You can't reach the clinic to schedule appointments. So that's left for someone to take care of it during the next work weeks or the next work day. So that becomes an issue. Number 4, unaddressed symptoms or complications at home. And the last one, poor communication between the hospital, primary care, and any specialists.
Oh, how very true. That has been a problem for a long time, and you and I both have experienced these things. So these gaps can turn a successful discharge, or what should be a successful discharge, into a revolving door. But a lot of times with the right support and, many readmissions then can be avoided through proper, discharge planning and advocacy.
You know, this is where a nurse advocate can step in. We help families to understand and clarify discharge instructions. We make sure that all medications are correct and that the prescriptions are filled. We help schedule and track follow-up appointments. We can help you recognize warning signs and when to know to call the doctor. And lastly, we can bridge those, that communication between all members of your healthcare team and the family.
So, we're really here to help ask the right questions. We've been in healthcare for a long time, so we know some of the questions that should be asked that a lot of people don't. We catch missing details. We make sure nothing falls through the cracks. Think about if you were an elderly woman or an elderly man living alone, and you went into the hospital or the doctor's office because you didn't feel good, and they saw you for your appointment, and they handed you a visit summary and 3 or 4 prescriptions and said, here you go. And you also have a diagnosis of mild dementia. Are you going to follow through? Who do you need to help you? Who will help you?
That's a really good point. We have a lot of aging adults that are what they call solo agers, and they're living home alone, and they don't have any resources or they don't have family close by to help them manage. And another good example of how an advocate can help. So I'm going to share a quick story. I worked many, many years in the hospital, and people don't, again, Linda mentioned it before in another episode, where people, they just don't know what they don't know. And so I just want to take just a minute to educate you on some of the things that can go wrong in a discharge process that we think are just automatic. So for example, when someone's being discharged to a nursing home, the nursing home wants the doctor's discharge summary as soon as possible. Those are their orders so that they can get on their end. The nursing home can get medications ordered. They can make sure they have the right supplies. They can make sure that they're ready to receive this patient, after they're discharged from the hospital. Okay, so the doctor does the discharge summary. the social worker, the discharge planner, the case manager, whoever is working on that process, sends that discharge summary over to the nursing home. Okay, we think, okay, we're staying ahead of it. We're giving them enough time. 15 minutes before discharge, the pharmacy says to the doctor, oh, we had to change this dose. We had to change this medication. We just got a culture results back. We have to change the antibiotic. This one we want, it will work better. So now the doctor has to go in, update the discharge summary, make all that. Well, it's already been printed and sent to the nursing home. Now, if someone is not manually catching the fact that there was a change made at the last minute as the patient's walking out the door, the nursing home isn't going to get that correct medication list. And there, boom, opportunity number one for a medication error, because the nursing home is now not having the correct medication. So these are the type of things that can fall through the cracks, and how these mistakes, even no one's making any mistakes intentionally. Everybody has everyone's best interest at heart. They're doing the best they can. We just want to reiterate it. It's really no one's fault. It's a gap. It's a crack in the system and in the process. And so that's where we can come in. We're following up. We'll know what that new medication was, because we're asking those questions. We're present, so we can make sure that all the dots are connected and everybody knows what's supposed to be done.
Yeah, that could have some really, really serious consequences. I mean, did you see a lot of those things when you were working in the hospital system?
Absolutely. Real quickly, we had a patient that was discharged from the hospital that was supposed to be started on a blood thinner. It was one of the newer ones. It was very expensive. The wife didn't come up to hear the discharge instructions. She had us bring down the patient to the door. She picked him up there in front of the hospital, went to the pharmacy, found out how much copay that medication was, and she chose not to pick up the prescription. Nobody knew until days later that he was not taking the blood thinner that he was sent home from the hospital.
So, and she probably didn't understand the consequences of that decision. So education is a really important part of that discharge planning. That's where advocacy can come in to help with that.
Absolutely. And one of the things, as an advocate, with our knowledge of the different new anticoagulants, one of the questions that I would have had I been an advocate for that patient and would been involved, in having in the know, is to look at their insurance formulary. Which one of those? Usually they'll cover one or the other, like an Eliquis or Xarelto. Those are the new blood thinners. Usually they'll cover one or the other. Sometimes they'll cover both, but I would have looked at that pharmacy or that insurance formulary to see which one might have been covered under their insurance. And this could have been checked ahead of time to make sure that they wouldn't have had that sticker shock when they went to pick up that medication.
Yeah, another situation would be someone, as I had a recent client, and this client, that had multiple ER visits, all for the same thing. Because what was happening was the individual had dementia, but it wasn't really, because they're so busy in the ED. They're so busy. And again, nothing is intentional, but didn't realize that the patient was activated and had an activated healthcare power of attorney, but was asking the patient the questions in regards to what was going on with them.
Yeah, Linda, could you just explain to our audience just what does that mean when it's activated? Sometimes they're not, that's not real clear to people.
What that means is that when an individual can no longer make good, rational decisions regarding caring for themselves or finances or in medical decisions, a lot of times they have an activation is done. It takes two physicians or two healthcare providers to sign off. They do different types of testing to make sure that cognition is or is not there. They ask certain questions. They do certain types of testing, and two physicians or two practitioners would sign a form or a document that says that this patient is really not able to, at this point in life, to make good decisions in regards to their finances or their health care. And those decisions then go to the person that they have chosen as their power of attorney for healthcare, or a durable power of attorney for healthcare and finances. So when they're activated, they should be turning to that power of attorney for those decisions in regards to healthcare and getting a history and getting medications. But sometimes in the busyness of our roles, we don't always look for that. And that can cause a lot of issues, as it did with this individual, because no one was notified and he kept returning. He had 4 ER visits in a period of 2 weeks until finally someone picked up the phone and called the healthcare power of attorney and said, this individual has been seen here. What's going on? They said, well, I was never notified. Why wasn't I notified? It's right on there that he's activated. Oh, we didn't know that. So this individual had 4 ER visits because of communication or lack thereof, which could have been avoided if they had contacted the healthcare power of attorney, who would have then contacted me as the advocate, and I could have coordinated a lot of those issues and possibly resolved and prevented some of those readmissions.
And just a side note, when we're talking about activating power of attorneys, we just want to know this is, with the 2 providers, this is the process here in Wisconsin. Every state might be a little different. So you want to check with your state regulations on what it takes to activate a healthcare power of attorney or advance directive. So just a little side note.
Yeah, that's very important, because you're right. State to state, it could be very different. And the forms that they use could also be very different. And the documents that they need for it could also be very different. So in saying that, research shows that, having a patient advocate involved during these transitions of care is not just by the stories we told, but statistics are saying this, that the care that we provide can reduce hospital admissions by 30%. We have said this before in our previous episodes, that 30% is quite a few readmission preventable causes. So families report greater peace of mind, improved medication safety, and along with better consequences and clinical outcomes when they're using a healthcare advocate.
A 2024 report from the Patient Advocate Foundation found that patients with advocate support had fewer complications and higher satisfactions with their recovery at home.
So we here at Your Nurse Advocate Consulting, we specialize in making sure that your family and you can navigate these critical transitions. Our independent, nurse-led approach means your loved one gets the personal hands-on support every step of the way.
And if you're preparing for a hospital discharge or just want to be proactive, reach out for a free 30-minute consult. It can't hurt. We can help. We'll help you build a plan that keeps your loved one safe and supported at home.
So thank you for listening to Healthcare Redefined. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, share it with a friend, leave us a review. And again, if there's input that you want to give us in regards to future episodes, send us information and we'll be more than happy to research it and then put it out on one of our podcasts.
And remember, you don't have to face the healthcare system alone. Advocacy can make the difference between a smooth recovery and another trip to the hospital. We're going to include our free resource in the show notes, and that's Transitions in Care. And it's going to give you some of those talking points that we have, things that can help you prepare for a discharge, whether it's a transition from home to the doctor's office, from the hospital to nursing home, or from the hospital home. So this will be available again in the show notes.
Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Take care.